Welcome back on deynonmod. Today I want to propose you a video about
Unboxing review of the Battetome Helsmiths of Hashut, released by the Games Workshop in November 2025. Although we saw the release of its army set as early as September 2025, it is a happy return of the Chaos Stars, whose last incarnation was with Warhammer Fantasy in Tamurkhan. It was a forged publication at the time. Now they are back as Helsmiths of Hashut, and their name represents all their aspects. They are, in fact, blacksmiths who work with the demonic energies and worship Hashut. But we'll find out more by reading this Battetome that I bought not to play them, but to satisfy my curiosity about the background. On the cover, we find a champion of the Infernal Courts, given the distinctive helmet he wears, armed with a shield and strangely a runic hammer, both unleashing demonic energies. The hammer instead of a sword or a two-handed hammer as the miniature. The artwork convey all the grandeur of their advance, while trampling on a dryad that is followed by an army of his fellow soldiers and war machines. I'm really curious to learn more about this army, so let's start browsing and reading about it. The back cover is a classical grayscale image. Here it conveys the suffocating feeling of soot and smoke that spread as the army advanced, very reminiscent of what we saw in the cover itself, since they are facing Sylvanet, especially the Dryads, which give even more feeling of a clash between polluting industry and nature, fully representing them. In the text, you can read the arrogance mold in the Helsmith soul. The land belongs intrinsically to them. They have conquered chaos with their forges and have not allowed themselves to be subdued by it. They are shaping the world itself, felling forests and shaping mountains. They gain glory in their worshipping Hashut, the father of darkness, the primordial flame. Now, with the emergence of the Skaven to challenge their rule, it is time for them to emerge and dominate all the realms as their right. Pure arrogance that sum up the very essence of the Helsmith of Hashut. And the image in the background is equally fascinating. The face of a bull with flames blazing all around. It is with green eyes, full of energy, shining, brightening with ardor. Now let's move on to the contents, and we can see that half of the pages are related to the background of the army and half to the rules. Although we will see a very large amount of beautiful images, and also in the rules part, many references to the background of the army. On the front page we can see a beautiful image of an army of Helsmiths with the models of the range presented, and it's really beautiful to analyze either for the models themselves, for the filmed scenes created, and also for the light effects of the forge. In the Legends of Hashut, here it is described how the Helsmiths of Hashut have become themselves, corrupted during the Age of Chaos, besieged by demons, yielding to the promises of power and dark knowledge from an evil Taurin-headed deity. It would be interesting to actually understand who this deity is in the future. Maybe we will see a sixth seat added to the Chaos Gods, forged in the arrogance that they had conquered chaos and did not submit to it. They were imbued with the chaos. Their bodies were corrupted and covered with lavish garments. They call themselves Zardron, but for the others they are the Oathbreakers, the Dark Ones, the Chaos Dwarden. They retain the basic characteristic and passion of the Dust, but taken to the extreme. They respect for rage, degenerating in tyrants to lead them. Interestingly, they have myriad of similarities with the Chaos Stars of the Old World, albeit from totally different generations. Also worthy reading in the panel below, which represents the beautiful image next to it, a meeting between three Dwarves genesis, the Caradon and the Faceless, who meet the legends of their evil cousins for the first time. Here we can see the image of the backcover in color, and if the grayscale color gave a sense of oppression, here we can grasp all the desolation and destruction that their events brings, martial and brutal. In Tactics of the Helsmiths, this describes the Helsmiths' approach to warfare, which remotely target enemy forces with their capabilities at a distance, meticulous in satisfying their egos with a surplus of barrages. Although it is always dangerous to tinker with demonic energies, they treat them as fuel for their own creations, certain that it is their right to plunder any necessary resources as due. They don't go to war alone, they have auxiliaries, mainly Hobgoths. There are also other sanctioned mutants who accompany them, the Bull Centaurs, led into war by the Guard, or Scorched Set, a religious set of sorcerers who know the words of the god Hashut. In the image around, you can see the charge of the Bull Centaurs breaking the ranks of the cities of Sigmar. In realms laid to waste is presented the residence of the Helsmiths, the ziggurat, a de facto city-state, describing their extremely regular geometric shapes. You can also see a picture of one of these, and aside a quick description of the characteristic and history of some ziggurat that we will see shortly, with an image of the city itself. And now we can open the pages and reveal the hidden content. The locations of some ziggurats are presented here. It starts with Ur-Zorn in Gur, a sacred place for the Helsmiths, because it is where Hashut itself resided. Here there is one of the most powerful scorched cults, as well as a high number of bull centaurs. The map, beautifully detailed, shows the location of the city and the nearby Zul-Bozor, besieged all around by orcs. In Zar Vixia, so we have the second of the ziggurat mentioned area, Zar Vixia, emerging from the waters of the Sea of Drowned Sorrows in the realm of Sheish. Here we have a rather peculiar ziggurat since, as a technique, he also devotes itself to using souls conquering underworlds to drain their magical energies. It is also peculiar in its social fabric, as it is consists of numerous fleet, each with its own traditions and heraldics, as well as considerable independence, unknown in any other Helsmith society. In Muspelzar, we then move on to the third of the ziggurats mentioned, Muspelzar in Shamon, as we can see in the map above, located in an area with many minor realm gates connecting Shamon to Akshi. It is both a promised land of metals and forges, but also a place where only the Helsmiths can thrive. They are obsessed with metals and change like the nature of the realm itself, and they are greedy for Urgold and the essence of Tzinch demons to use in their creations. In the Forge Anathema, here we have not one but a cluster of ziggurat. We are in an area of action that we have learned to know well with the Dawnbringer Crusades, near Embergard and the New of the Skaven, which emerged to bring the Skaven and the Hour of Ruin. These are one of the most important covens of the Helsmiths, for not the first, who accepted Hashut's teaching. They are led by Urak Tar, the oldest of the demonsmiths, and you can see that it is their clothing that it is on the cover of this same Battetome. Here we can see the previous Admiral Sherry from another perspective and an army of current overlords trying to storm the Helsmiths, finding fierce and fiery resistance. Here is a story about the birth of Hashut as a deity and the Helsmiths themselves. Older brother of the other Dwarves and not demon, relegated to Gur to develop the realm once then him, Akshi and Shamon, convinced by the words of his sister Valaya. Here founded Urzorn and subdued what appeared to be Droguks, conquered the very essence of Gur, accused is unjustly said to have used and subdued the spirits of the beast, denigrated for his achievements, insulted, he decided to go to the realm of chaos, to the Forge of Souls, and learn the techniques. Here he forges artifacts for each of his brothers to take revenge for the offenses he suffered. He managed to drive Gruni crazy, while Grimnir can barely tie himself and his brothers so that he can cool their anger before being saved by outside intervention. The remaining ancestors march on Urzorn, and only Valaya intervention, in an act that the Helsmiths themselves refuse to talk about, managed to sever Hashut's physical form along with her own. The Duardin have hidden and forgotten Hashut's name, and it is time to awaken those memories. The image next to this is truly splendid, where you can see a ziggurat dominated by the spirit of Hashut. In Sinister Origins, whereas the Helsmith story of the Hashut was previously discussed, now is the time to delve into the history of the Zardron themselves. This described the greed that prevented their ancestors from escaping the invasions of the Age of Chaos, taking refuge in their own Karax and seeing the demons in the depths. Prisoner of themselves, close to starvation, with demons whispering promise of power to them, eventually they gave in, starting to use the essences of the demons themselves. Finally, Hashut arrived, and he passed on to the Lost House the stolen demonic fire and his arcane knowledge, demanding pain and veneration in return. The Duardin have an advantage in body and mind in handling demonic energies by being resilient to them, but they too have become corrupt in the long run, and now is the time to reclaim what is rightful theirs. In the box, we can see how the Helsmith cuneiform sculpture, Zaradid, was born and developed. In the image, we can see the Ashen Elders in the act of forging. In Hashutite society, this described how the Hashut society works, which is basically a Duardin soap opera. The hosts are maintained, but each word is carefully weighted. Being subservient is a revenge to be claimed in the future, arranged marriages and ruling houses. Although society is very cruel, it ultimately allows the individual to climb it if they are sure enough. Promises are never to be rescinded for fear that Hashut himself might do something similar. The set of oaths is called the wage of toil and is taken very seriously, as we've seen. In the box below, you can see how the cast Duardin perceives the other Dwarves gods, a grudge that is based on having been abandoned. The front page is interesting and is in the comment that it analyzes what the Helsmith thinks about their own society, and below you can find an example of a war roast and the characterization of the figures that compose it. In the Smith craft, here is the Helsmith relationship with the metallurgy, also included in the box, which is used with respect but utilitarian, that being either the hammer or the demonic tools are ultimately just tools. The automata themselves have changed their appearance from remembering the ancestors to representing the towering forms of Hashut, and the image on the side of the Smith and the animated Dominator is wonderful in this regard. In Rise of Darkness, here it is described how the Zardon survived the Age of Chaos, or how they call it the Age of Revelations, to do having been abandoned by their gods, and how they are present in all realms except Azir, and trade with everyone, even the Caradon cousins, except for the Scavens. The Helsmiths have always been careful in their retreat to never offend the gods of chaos, almost exclusively preying on unmarked demon souls, also because the chaotic are one of their most important customers, as the image below also shows. On the sides, we find some narrated episodes. On the left, we talk about the role that the Hobgrots have in being a bridge of communication between Oryx and Duardin to past disagreements. On the right, some interesting events from how they managed to bring the hired Gargants sent to besiege Zarvix on their side, or how they bombed the surrounding grounds of the Osseboripes to seize their gold, or how they went to Giran to steal precious woods, which in part recalls the covers of the same Battetome. In the Black Hammerfoss, Devon's surrounding Scavented and the Howard Ruin are covered here. The invasion of the Scaven brought serious consequences to the Helsmiths Ziggurat, however, minimized by arcane artifacts that allow them to absorb, at least in some cases, the energies released, and some warning signs that had alarmed them. The Helsmiths reacted violently, and only the intercession of the Vanguard allowed the hostilities to stall. The Helsmiths also caught a glimpse of and intrigued about the Stormcast Eternals, as they had noticed gloomy touch in their armor. It is with a particular event in which the Helsmiths faced the chambers of ruination of the Stormcast Eternals when they thought they were secured, that although they eventually win the battle, it cost them resources and oaths. They decided to make the tyranny felt, and also give heavy smack to the Skaven. Also, they plan to demonstrate their intent wasting the Grimnir's Firehold, and the box included the assault to Grimnir's Firehold, a focus point of the other Dwarven forces. The Zardon decide to storm and plunder it, also deploying an enhanced arsenal and eventually. Here we will see each of the units that make up an army of the Helsmiths of Hashut, and we can notice the colors are referred to the Forge Anathema, which we talked about earlier, the most important of the Ziggurats. The boxes on the pages still explain some background about it and the use of corrupt runes emulated by the Hobgrots. In the image below, we can see an overview of an army of the Helsmiths from the Forge Anathema. Here we can see the beautiful miniature of Urak-Tar, the first demosmith, which is truly wonderful. On the next page, however, a clash between the Helsmiths of the Forge Anathema and the Sylvanet, and given the polluting capability and the devastation that the Helsmiths demonstrate in the various realms, these clashes are predictable. Just remember the same cover of this Battetome. Urak-Tar. This describes the story of the first demosmith, who is so old that he said he took lessons directly from Hashut himself. His body is now yielding to the purification that characterizes all the Zardon sorcerers as a consequence of using the Hashut magic. But with willpower, he still managed to disseminate his will while seeking a remedy that is identified in becoming a deity himself. His own mount, Gorakos, is an exception among the various similar automata created, since he seems to have been forced using souls, perhaps of Droguks, and which over the millennia seems to have developed a consciousness, and which still reveals secrets. With the Howard Ruin, Urak-Tar saw a chance to ascend to a god to free himself from the petrification that afflicts him, and the very desire to conquer Grimnir's Firehold was more about wanting to plunder his coffins, and among them he discovered something fascinating. In the image on the side we can see Urak-Tar going into battle to lead the army, in this case facing 5 slayers. Demosmith on Infernal Taurus. He explained how the Helsmith society work on the Demosmith side. They are revered, but at the same time essential to make the various mechanisms and weapons work. They are always looking for disciples because good disciples also includes the fame of their masters. The creation of an Infernal Taurus is the pinnacle of the Demosmith abilities, used as a test of value but also as a war machine when needed. From the box we can understand how the Helsmiths themselves are aware that their Dwarven body is not suitable for handling ever, and that the price to pay is a slow and inexorable petrification, the Hashut price, to be able to handle it. This price is also set since it gives them power, and if they excel, they will be placed on the tops of the ziggurat to admire the conquered lands, and if they are weak, as a material for spells, realists and nihilists till the end. Here we can see the 3 leading figures of the Helsmiths. The war despots, mainly from the royal clans, go into battle to conquer, manage the power and the Helsmith society. Although, as in the box also expressed by Urak-Tar, they bend their heads and take oaths to the Demosmiths in order to access to their creations. The Demosmiths are defined as rare, and although they are claimed to come only from noble clans, in cases where they are born into smaller clans, they are forcibly adopted, each using the other for its own purposes as an object. The Ashen Elder are the priests of the Helsmiths, and they too are petified by handing the Helsmiths teachings. They are also described using as weapon a black hammer, a parody of the criminal's favorite weapon. Here we can find a description of the Helsmiths war machines. On the one hand, ranged weapons, bombers and missiles, artillery that use chaotic energies and almost sentient forging residues, both maximized to be not only lethal but also inflict pain. On the other hand, we find the Dominator engines, real iron golems powered by demonic suits and also priests of ancestral gods to activate them. They are towering like automatons and do not know pity and can be machine guns or brick for ram. Here we can see the various machines of the Helsmiths presented in this Battetome, the Dominator engines, Desolation batteries, and the Infernal Towers. Truly splendid models, and the setting in which they are immersed enhance the models even more. Here we can see the description of the recruitment and tactics of the Infernal Courts, the basic troops of the Zardron armies, methodical and brutal both towards their enemies and their allies. Also interesting are the banners of the main ziggurat and the various color schemes for painting them. I don't understand why Zarvix is presenting with a lavic base being positioned on the sea, but I have to admit that it is the one with the color and background pattern that I prefer, so it is still welcome to me. Infernal races, they are the shooters whose ranks are mainly composed of low-born Zardron, who use these weapons to quickly pay their wage of toil. They use the flesh itself or the souls of the demons to target their opponents, leaving devastation on their path. Obgrus Vandals. They are Obgrus renegades or opportunists who see joining the Duardin as a way to survive and even thrive, and have managed to carve out a mediating role between the Duardin and the Oroks after the Wars of the Broken Promise. Interestingly, the Obgrus has also developed their own writing Obgrus, which mimics that of the Zardon, although peculiar. Bull Centaurs. Here we can read about these chosen Duardin mutants. Their towering forms make them favorites as close to Hashut. They have an aggressive mindset, unlike the other Zardon, and an even larger ego. They feel that they owe something only to the scorched sect that raised them and to Hashut himself, while even the Demosmiths cannot rebuke them. Among the Bull Centaurs there are some even more fervent ones, the Anointed Sentinels, wearing Hashutars, ritual masks that intoxicate them with vapors that make them obedient to the Ashen Elders and even more selfless. Here we can see images of the icons closest to the representation of Hashut. Uraktar on its Infernal Taurus, the Bull Centaurs, and the Anointed Sentinels, beautiful models. So let's move on to the rules part. This is a new army, so its rules and operation are completely new. Remember to read and reread the rules well, so to understand how they work. I'll do a quick overview, but of course it will have to be tested as well as the synergies, especially since I don't intend to collect the army itself, and I was mainly interested in its background. Let's start with the battle traits. So, leave the land in ruin. This is a battle trait that is combined with the next one and allow to be a source of desolation tokens that will then turn into demonic power points and recast to contest Shenic terrain features or objectives. Of course, it requires units to be in contest of them, so care must be taken. Each Shenic element contested by a out of combat Helsmiths of Hashut unit gains a desolation token. Attention, cause you gain at the beginning of each player's turn and that they are one more each turn. It is not specified that once assigned it is lost if the requirement are lost. Harness demonic power. This battle trait show in part how to get demonic power points, already anticipation that they will be essential to actually make the various unit of the Battetome interesting. At the beginning of each turn, all the demonic power points of the army are removed. Then you earn 1 demonic power point for each desolation token generated with the previous trait that can then be distributed among the various non-Hogwarts units. Each unit can have a maximum of 3 demonic power points. The unallocated ones are lost, although it will be quite difficult to find in such situation. The service of demonic power, relying on shining elements alone, is not enough given the large number required, and the use of command points is therefore involved. With an expense of 1 command point, you gain 2 demonic power points to 1 unit if the total of the same army is 3 or less, otherwise 1. Think how to always have a fee of 1 command point to get the effect. It is certainly very useful in the first rounds and stabilize with the next ones. Also interesting is the phrase below where a Ashen Elder calls the Stormcast smelling tears. And then we have the battle formations. Hashut host and mass legions. This formation allows you to have 3 additional dice to the release, but only if it's an infantry unit with 3 demonic power points to do the rally. It's not bad, but you have to figure out if it's worth it. Castigation battery experimental munitions add 1 to the feature of shooting weapons attacks only for war machines with 3 demonic powers. It's not bad at all, especially since the golems are also war machines. You will have to make an army mainly based on this to make the most of it. The bullfat horns bulls of the ziggurat are 2-inch to the cavalry and monsters if they have 3 demonic power points. Good if you go up in an army very fast as a focal point for objective contours and combat. Demon Cabal Arcane Dominance add 1 to the casting, dispersing, banishing, and prayers for wizard and priest with 3 demonic power points. Here, of course, it means magic and prayers. There is definitely a lot of information in the box below, including the fact that you can also have matrix in power and the description of Helsmiths of Hashut combat tactics as we mentioned earlier, with artillery and following devastating combat, as well as how to manage resources, even dueling. And I've had the heroic traits. Savvy Automaton, attention that works in the deployment phase. Take an automaton unit which refers to a golem in combat range as a distance. The golem becomes the bodyguard, and if in combat range from the model, it gains strike first, and if the character is infantry, it gains a 5+. Here I am undecided whether it is better to have a fight version like Golem or whether to give it to a magician or a priest and have a shooting Golem to accompany him. In the first case, strike first is used more, and in the second, the word 5+. An eye for weakness, it's in its hero phase, make it choose an enemy unit within 18-inch until the start of your next turn, adding 1 to the wound rolls for a shoot combat attacks that target that enemy unit. This can be very interesting for both distance and combat, as it can be used to facilitate other units while dealing with something else. Fire Modus is activated in the enemy charge phase. It's pretty much a counter-charge but for shooting. You choose a friendly infantry unit wholly within 12-inch, and this can shoot as in its own shooting phase. You have to target the same unit with all the attacks, and this must have charged this phase, obviously. You hit only with the hit roll of not modified at 6. It is useful but very considerable limitation. In the box below, you can read about how precious are the disciples and the other demosmiths, and especially how important the wage of toll is at any level of the Helsmith society. It also shows how important Hogwarts life is if anyone actually cares. Artifacts of power. Scroll of Petrification. Once per battle, any hero phase, you choose a shoot unit wholly within 12-inch, and this one gain 3 effects. Ward 2+, he can't use abilities that aren't passive or be target of friendly abilities, and units can ignore it for movement, charge, or setting up deployment. Literally a last stand being alone. It's useful, but I struggle to find many opportunities to use it, especially being once per battle. Crucible of Spite. Even this artifact, it's once per battle, and it's in its own hero phase. But it is perhaps one of the most interesting, especially if you intend to use it in the first rounds of the game, when the demonic power points are few and you want to be sure that you use the chariot to its full potential, especially in combination with dedicated battle formation. Remember, however, that it is a kind of sacrifice since you give them up to 3 demonic power points for that turn, but then they will vanish and you can't give them any more for the rest of the battle. So be careful how you want to use these. Gauntlets of Punishment causes you to choose a unit within 12 inch of you and to throw a d3, and at 2+, you inflict damage equal to the result. Okay, but nothing excellent. Spell of Infernal Power. Hateful Fetus, casting at 6, controls the movement of an opponent unit within 18 inch by halving its movement until the start of your own next turn. Ashen Smog, casting at 7, a shining feature within 18 inch with a Desolation token, earns Obscuring until the start of your next turn and roll a d3 for each enemy unit that is contesting it, and at 2+, the damage is dealt to the unit. It's crucial to understand if you want to obscuring the opposing unit. Molten Metal, casting at 8, targets an enemy unit within 18 inch, roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified casting roll result, and deal 1 mortal damage for each roll equal to or exceeding the opponent's save. Prayer Lore of the Scorched Set. Black Flames of Hashut Chant at 4+, chooses an enemy unit within 12 inch, roll a number of dice equal to the number of models, and every 5+ is 1 mortal damage. If the chant was 8+, every 4+. Furnace Blessing Chant at 4+, chooses a Hashut friend unit wholly within 12 inch and add 1 to the melee weapons rend for the rest of the turn. Chant for 8+, weapons has also crit mortal. Storm of Obsidian Shard at 5+, targets an enemy unit within 18 inch and inflict d3 mortal damage and remove 3 from target control. If he turns out to be 10+, a second unit is chosen. Players are more interested in doing damage than spells, although spells are more for control of the field. In the box we can see the grudge that the Helsmiths have towards the Caradon, although they call them technology obsessed when they says and we also see an example of Hashut magic in action. And by the way, their gold is always useful. Then let's start talking about the units. Urak Tar. This is a special character of the army. It's a very interesting model both in terms of design and profile. Excellent in combat and shooting, even magic. But above all, he controls the distribution of the demonic power points of the unit wholly within 18 inch of him in the enemy hero phase, thus being able to reorganize them for better management or to earn bonuses in cells, since he gives his best when he has at least 2 on him. Demonsmith on Infernal Taurus. It is less well performing than the Patriarch, but it still does its own thing, although the real problem is that it is not a magician or a demonic power point manager by comparison. It works well in synergy with cavalry units for retreat and charge. Its advantage is Rampage, since with a little luck it can kill models, even hero, up to 5 wounds without save or ward. War Despot, the Battetome infantry fighter hero, increases area control and improves an infantry unit to fight immediately after him if within his combat range. The story next to him is also interesting, where you can see the arrogance of a War Despot towards the Skaven, and when wounded in pride, the fury that overwhelmed him, and then minimized. Demonsmith is the wizard and shooter of the Battetome. Its real strength is to be able to cure the golem or the larger characters seen before. More distance and better based on the number of demonic power points he has. Only one, regardless of the number of the deynonmod you have, and possibly even cast spells, or was the other way around? Ashen Elder, the priest of the Battetome, sell powers with ritual points for the next round and bubble up to reduce the damage. Perhaps it compensates for the magician with the profile given the goodness of the prayers. Infernal Razors with Thunderbusts. It totally evokes the lethality of the Chaos Stars shooting units of the old world. It improves the range based on the number of the demonic power points it has, and if all the models in the unit target the same enemy unit, they can inflict the strike last effect at 6, to which add the number of models killed by this unit this turn. Infernal Razors with Flamehurlers. They are a unit with a shorter range than the previous ones, and within range an effect that affects the control of the enemy unit, which only works against infantries. Hobgoblins Vandals, a mass unit of the Battetome. Its ability to move during the deployment phase can be seen as a way of quickly taking different chunk elements to which it can then assign desolation tokens to generate demonic power points for the army. The story on the side in which Hobgoblins and Orcs interact and the physical and mental brutality inherent, it is very interesting. Infernal Court with Hashut Spear is a combat unit specialized against cavalry made to control objective that can boost its rally even if a limited number of times, generate demonic powers at 3+ for itself or other unit if it is controlling objective, but only rolls once per objective, and earn a ward based on the number of demonic power points that it has. Infernal Court with Hashut Blades is a specialized combat unit against infantry for rallying and ward equal to the version with spear, but the ability allows you to always run at least for much worse than the spear counterpart, not even generating demonic power points. On the right, we can see the narrative description of the image, a clash between Helsmiths and First Layers, and thus understand the stubbornness and how long the Zardon can carry resentment by remembering the Hashut's life. Bull Centaurs are beautiful models and pure fighter. Maximum damage is done in charge. And remember the synergies with the Demonsmith on Infernal Taurus. For them, the demonic power point is the possibility to improve the charge roll, possibly making it infallible. Anointed Sentinels, an alternative version of the Bull Centaurs who are specialists in countercharge, but then one unit is enough. Next to it, we can see the description of the battle representing the advanced Helsmith war machines, preceded by the Anointed Sentinels who charge the Luminate ranks. Tormentor Bombard. If the shooting Dominator is a machine gun, this is literally a perfect artillery against infantry and cavalry, especially if it has 5 or more models. And if you target an enemy unit with all its attacks, you can roll a die, and at 3+, that unit can't use command until the start of your next turn, which also includes your opponent's turn. Furthermore, for each demonic power owns, other targets are chosen within 6 inch, and the effect is drawn on those targets as well. Lethal. Death Striker Rocket Battery. If the Tormentor is artillery, this is more of a torpedo. It has less range and fewer attack as well as a worse hit roll, but what it does well is it to do damage, especially against monsters and war machine. In addition, the ability allows you to roll a die for each demonic power point for each unit within the target's combat range, and the 3+, it inflicts a mortal wound. Note that a minimum of 1 demonic power point is needed to apply the effect, and that the opponent has to be packed with multiple units to be truly useful. Otherwise, they can be forgotten on this model. Dominator Engine with Bane Maces is a bodyguard or an anti-hero fighter. Remember that it has the keyword automaton to be able to use the relative heroic trait. Dominator engine with immolation cannons. You can never get enough of them. Slightly weaker than its combat counterpart about melee, but between skills and demonic power points, and perhaps the battle formation for war machines, is to fear its shooting ability. Fortunately for the opponent, its range is limited, but the amount of attacks that it can put out is a real torrent of fire. And now we can start to see about the spearheads that I quite like as game. It's really quite amazing, both to start the game or to play itself. So it's really quite nice. And moreover, I like the combination that has been selected for this spearhead. It's really quite nice. Then how about the painting, that it's quite useful as always, but it's up to you to decide if you want to have another scheme of color. And I've had a part about the rules for the spearhead. Sincerely, I quite appreciate the selection that has been done, as I said, because you have the troops, the leader, the artillery, and the war machine. That it's fantastic. This, if you have not been able to find the army set, it's a good addition because you have almost the base that you can need, and really fantastic in my opinion. I quite appreciate it. Here are the rules. It's how you decide to read. Remember that you can find for free the rules about these spearheads on the site of the Warhammer community, so eventually try there because you can have them for free, and if you want to start, it's a good way. And I quite like. Moreover, we have here the part about the path to glory. Here, as always, I hope that in the future there will be a sort of official way, the match you play, so that you can create at least your character, your general, because it's really quite amazing to create one that is personalized, and I quite like. So here is something that eventually I suggest you to try, because it's a good way to start to create your own character and so on, and modify to find at the end something that it's completely yours. So I think that it's really quite nice. Here we can choose which one of the path to choose, so it's good. And then we had the part about the Army of Renown. Then let's move to the Army of Renown Tars Grand Forjost. As the name suggests, it is an alternative list based on Urak Tar, which is of course mandatory to be included. It does not welcome Hobgrots, but this is not a problem. It is a very interesting variant since the battle traits, between the various bonuses given by the Rising Fire and the possibility to bring back on the battlefield, albeit halved, infantry units for 1 command point. What is worrying is that one of the basic characteristics of the Helsmiths of Hashut is missing, a way to generate demonic power points other than a number of units of infernal cores with spears. The rock trait is practically an alternative version of the Hashutite host battle formation, and the spells are protective and quite interesting, while the pairs are rather peculiar, even if Lava Storm is excessive compared to the others, having no range and therefore being able to target the world battlefield. It should certainly be tested, but I admit that I'm not entirely convinced, or at least certain we need a complete rethink about the synergies. Army of Renown Ziggurat Stampede. It's a list based on monstrous units. It aims not to include infantry units other than the war machine crew, but otherwise cavalry and golems. Among the heroes themselves, there is only the Demonsmith on Infernal Taurus. Again, battle trait do not include generating demonic power points, because you can't even include infernal cores being them infantry. The battle traits are all directed at charging quickly, making it easier as more and more units do so, and giving all the units the ability to pass through. Remember that the command points must be spent anyway. In addition, one of these can retreat and charge or shoot again. The Roy trait is revenge for one's own clumsy, while their artifact is a security to be able to charge that combines well with the battle traits. Not including priests, it has an additional spell that you can use, which is fairly standard. What makes me dub is the Burnt to Ash, which allow you to give a Desolation token in addition to Obscuring, but there is no way to convert or generate demonic power points, since the battle traits of this army replace and do not add to the basic ones. And in fact, the Game Social released a FAQ the 29 October 2025, removing the refer about the Desolation token because it was useless. And now the test is much more understandable, so now it's finally okay. Then let's move on to the Regiment Renon with Regiment Renon the Curse Steel Battery. That is an excellent addition to the chaotic armies that want to have a support of artillery, and they also improve themselves with self-generated demonic power points. And in fact, the Games Workshop released a FAQ the 29 October 2025, removing the refer about the desertion token because it was useless, and now the test is much more understandable, so now it's finally okay. Here we can see a summary of the Battetome basic rules, battle traits and magic for a quick consultation. Here we can see the back-cover seen at the beginning with the presence of the code that can be registered on the Warhammer website, and then have available the Battetome profiles on the Age of Sigmar app for iOS or Android. Of course, I masked my code. As a final page, we can see an army of Helsmiths of Hashut ready for battle. So, what to say about this Battetome? Honestly, I find that it's very interesting. In terms of background, I am absolutely satisfied. Although, of course, I would like to have even more background to read. In terms of rules, I have to admit that even if I'm not going to play with this army, I like the set of rules that is proposed, although I find some discrepancy with the army of Renons regarding the absence of the demonic power points. In general, a Battetome that I really appreciated, but I'm curious to know about what you think about it. Did you like it? Have you succumbed to the temptation to buy them? Or even just as chaotic player, do you want to deploy the Zardon artillery on the field? Write in the comments, I'm quite curious about your thoughts.
So,
From deynonmod it's everything. I invite you to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell so to receive notification about new video, to comment under here about this video, or if you want to suggest me new videos. So, I hope to see you again to the next time.